The Galactic Council's chamber pulsed with an eerie, living presence. Though no natural sound dared to disrupt the gathering solemnity, the bioluminescent walls cast shifting light patterns over the alien representatives seated in their curved chairs. At the crystalline podium in the chamber's heart, refracted light lingered, scattering into an array of iridescent hues. Captain Alaha stood rigid, her jaw slightly slack, fingers tightening around the edges of her console. The weight of countless foreign eyes pressed upon her, their penetrating stares a silent judgment. From the highest seat in the chamber, the Supreme Arbiter loomed, his tall lizard-like figure draped in deep crimson robes that cascaded over his angular frame like a shroud of authority. His voice, cold and clipped, reverberated through the vast hall. "You have been given this moment to address the council," he declared, his tone devoid of patience. "But make no mistake, your people's doom will be swift." Alaha inhaled slowly, steadying her breath before speaking. Her uniform, an immaculate white, seemed starkly out of place in this hall of opulence and decay. She met the council's expectant gaze, her voice calm yet urgent. "Humanity is not the threat you imagine us to be," she said. A whisper rippled through the chamber, some voices guttural, others clicking and sharp. The Arbiter's eyes narrowed as he tapped his clawed fingers against the console before him in slow, deliberate rhythm. "Speak as if your actions have not already condemned you," he scoffed. "Unchecked, your species spreads like a plague, consuming resources without regard for the fragile equilibrium of the cosmos." His voice hardened. "The Council has seen your kind before." Alaha held her ground, her gaze unwavering. She had witnessed the so-called evidence against humanity, fragmented moments of war, diplomatic failures twisted into damning accusations. "We are more than the invasions and conflicts you choose to define us by," she countered. "We are builders, dreamers. What you call conquest is survival, born not of malice but of desperation." From the corner of her eye, she caught a subtle nod from Xylan, the Ventari representative. His slender form all but melted into the chamber's shifting shadows, his silky blue garments shimmering against the dim glow. His presence had always been enigmatic, but in that moment, his quiet support was unmistakable. The Arbiter's voice cut through her thoughts like a blade. "The Council has already reached its decision." His tone was final. "Enough of your sentimental pleas. Your species stands on the brink of extinction. The worlds you have touched lie barren, stripped of their lifeblood." A flash of anger flared within Alaha, but she forced herself to remain composed. "I will not deny humanity's mistakes," she said, her voice even. "But we have learned from them. What you perceive as recklessness is the desperate will to survive. Let us prove our worth not through destruction, but through collaboration." For the first time, silence fell over the chamber. A glimmer of hope flickered within her, only for it to be shattered by the Arbiter's cold, ruthless smile. "Collaboration?" he echoed, his amusement laced with disdain. "Humanity speaks of unity while forging weapons capable of shattering moons. The Council will not gamble its safety on hollow words." Xylan stirred, his voice calm yet firm. "If they were truly the threat you claim," he said, "why do they plead for peace instead of striking first? Perhaps their story is one we have not truly heard." The Arbiter's eyes darkened, turning on Xylan with barely concealed contempt. "Your fascination with this primitive species blinds you," he sneered. "And your hatred blinds you to their potential," Xylan replied, inclining his head ever so slightly. Alaha seized the opening. "If you wish to judge humanity, then do so fairly," she urged. "Allow an investigation, one that can prove our alliances are not threats but opportunities." Laughter rippled through the chamber, cold and devoid of mirth. "Captain," the Arbiter said, his voice dripping with finality, "you fail to understand. Your presence here is nothing more than a courtesy. The decision has already been made." A crimson holographic sigil materialized before him, the universal emblem of condemnation. "Humanity will be eradicated." A sharp breath caught in Alaha's throat, but before she could object, guards closed in around her. Their metallic exoskeletons moved with unnerving precision, their unreadable expressions mirroring the Council's verdict. "Your vessel awaits," one of them said, his tone laced with contempt. As she was led from the chamber, her gaze met Xylan's one last time. His expression was unreadable, yet his eyes burned with silent determination. In the vast corridors beyond, Alaha straightened her posture. The Council had delivered its judgment, but the fight for survival was far from over. The ship's thrusters ignited, propelling them into the shifting maze of the twilight asteroid field. The crew worked in tense silence, their movements deliberate, their minds sharpened by urgency. Every so often the hull groaned in protest, a haunting reminder of their fragile existence. Xylem schematics have been entered into the fabrication unit, Marisol, the chief engineer, reported. Alaha exhaled, a sliver of hope threading through her voice. If the materials hold, we can begin constructing the EMP apparatus. Beside her, Thea turned sharply. How long? Marisol hesitated. 48 hours, give or take. But testing it, that's another matter entirely. Thea's expression darkened, but she nodded. Do what you can. We'll deal with the risks later. Soft radar beeps punctuated the silence as the vessel weaved through the field, each calculation bringing them closer to the unknown. Unforeseen variables flickered through Alaha's mind, the relentless press of time, the harsh truth of their dwindling resources, and the Council's looming decree. Captain, Amir called, his voice shattering her thoughts. She turned, shoulders squared, resolve tightening like iron around her spine. Humanity had been sentenced. But the war for their future had only just begun. I think we've found something. Thea turned sharply, tension coiling in her chest. Amir's voice was steady, but there was an edge to it, a quiet urgency. He tapped a few keys, and the display flickered to life, revealing faint anomalies at the fringes of the asteroid field. Small variations, almost imperceptible, but enough to draw suspicion. It could be debris, Marisol murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Or the remnants of a scout ship. Thea's jaw tightened. Moving closer, she examined the screen as it refined the image. The distortion resolved into a sleek, dark vessel, its hull absorbing the surrounding light. A scout ship. Designed for stealth. Her worst fear confirmed. Mar, she whispered. His voice was grave. They're looking for us. They won't find us, Thea said, her command sharp and unwavering. Shut down all non-essential systems. Absolute silence. The hum of auxiliary power faded into nothingness. The bridge dimmed, consoles flickering off one by one. A heavy stillness settled over the crew as they watched the alien vessel sweep its sensors methodically through the asteroid belt. It lingered far longer than expected, scanning, searching. Seconds stretched into agonizing minutes. Then finally, it veered away, swallowed by the black void of space. A quiet exhale passed through the room, the collective release of breath they had all been holding. They'll be back, Amir murmured. His voice was low, grim. And they won't come alone. Thea's fingers curled into a fist. Then we finish the device before they do. Time lost meaning as the crew worked tirelessly in the ship's cramped fabrication bay. The EMP device took form, piece by piece, its core components pulsing with a faint, electric glow. Marisol took the lead, her hands moving with precision, weaving power into function. This will produce a pulse strong enough to disrupt their AI core, she explained, a flicker of pride in her voice. But deploying it, that's another story. Thea studied the device. It was compact, almost unassuming, its elegant structure betraying the sheer magnitude of power it contained. We'll find a way, she assured. Marisol hesitated. Captain, even if we use this, there's no guarantee it will stop them. If it fails, they might retaliate harder. Thea placed a steady hand on her shoulder, her gaze unwavering. It's a risk we have to take. If we do nothing, there won't be a future left to protect. Marisol nodded, determination flickering back into her eyes. When the crew gathered in the briefing room, Thea activated the holographic display. A vast swarm of red markers bled across the star map, a relentless tide closing in on Earth. Our target is here. She pointed to the heart of the enemy fleet. The command ship. The AI core. Silence stretched across the room. The EMP needs to be placed inside their defensive perimeter, she continued. That means a direct infiltration. A murmur passed through the gathered crew. Amir crossed his arms. Captain, getting that close is suicide. Their defenses will tear us apart before we even reach them. Thea's gaze didn't waver. We'll use the asteroid field's interference to mask our approach. Once inside, a small team will infiltrate the command vessel and deploy the device. Marisol's voice was hesitant. Who's going? Thea already knew the answer. I will. A sharp intake of breath. Captain, no, Amir said immediately. I should go. The mission needs precision. I won't let anyone else take that risk. Thea met his gaze, firm but resolute. If we fail, humanity will need its best minds to survive. They can afford to lose a captain. They can't afford to lose an engineer or a strategist. A heavy silence settled over the room. Unspoken fears lingered between them, but no one argued further. The tension on the ship was palpable. The asteroid field granted them a fragile shield, but the threat of detection loomed like a specter. Thea turned to Amir. Keep the ship safe. Something goes wrong, get back to Earth. Warn them. Amir clenched his jaw. He nodded, but the weight of her words settled heavily in his eyes. With quiet resolve, Thea stepped into the shuttle. The EMP device was secured in the cargo bay, its potential humming beneath her fingertips. As the countdown began, she took one final breath. The mission was a gamble. But it was humanity's only chance.